Date is June 9th, 1922. I'm recording this log because I just had the most peculiar meeting with my newest patient. A man that goes by the name of J. Gatsby. He was very vague when he talked about his reasons for originally seeing me. However, I can tell he is a very troubled individual. He's unlike any human I have ever studied, for his motivations seem so deliberately secret. Although unknown to myself, he seems to know exactly what he wants in life, which is unusual, seeing that normally people are driven by their subconscious, their motivations only clearly seen in dreams or through methods such as free association. Normally, I would help my patients find out what their true motivations are, in order for them to take the right steps toward living a life they can be satisfied with and proud of. But with Gatsby, it's different. Without giving me any clear story, I must crack this case myself, and hopefully, in the process, I will get Gatsby to admit what is causing him distress. It may be that although he knows his motivations, he's not proud of them. I feel that if I'm able to get Gatsby to reveal what he knows about himself, then things could only get better from there. However, with all this said, he did tell me about his childhood. For many of my former patients, their motivations have been rooted in traumatic experiences from their childhood. Although Gatsby has not revealed to me anything extremely traumatic, he did grow up very poor in a rural part of North Dakota. He seemed to despise being poor so much, though, that getting him to admit this took most of our meeting time today. At the beginning of our session, he gave a brief background and claimed to grow up in San Francisco. Only later, when details didn't match up, was I able to force the truth out of him. Although he is a mysterious character, I can tell when he lies, and he does quite often. Considering Gatsby's standing in society currently, I can hopefully assume that his journey of becoming rich will have something to do with his current motivations. Why did he hate being poor so much? What made him realize that there were better things out there for him? How do these suppressed feelings from his childhood affect his life now? Hopefully, by our next meeting, I will answer some of these questions. The date today is July 10th, and Gatsby and I finally had another meeting after waiting a whole month. Today, he seemed different. He briefly mentioned hosting a particularly interesting party, but not much more was said about the matter. Instead, he talked more about his childhood and how he got to be rich. He said he owed it all to a man named Dan Cody. Gatsby first encountered Cody while he was running away from poverty at the mere age of 17. Cody was a multimillionaire who had built his fortune on his own and who also had a passion for sailing. He, in a way, took Gatsby under his wing. He hired him to be his assistant on his yacht. And together they sailed around the world 3 times, so he says. They fared many harsh storms.
There she blows,
However,
old sport!
Cody was often drunk, so Gatsby was in charge of him during these times. Anyways, the Stan Cody figure died. Gatsby was quite vague about it, something about a mistress coming onto the yacht. All Gatsby told me was that it was inhospitable. Based on how Gatsby talked about the Stan Cody figure, I could tell he was a very influential character in his life. Perhaps his motivations in life could be to pursue a future like that of Dan Cody, minus the sailing part. If anything, he definitely gained his wealth in similar ways. They both came from nothing, and were not afraid to break the law. Oh, also, one thing I should quickly mention, he wasn't always named J. Gatsby, but instead, James Gatz. There's something about changing your name that speaks volumes about how you view your life. Perhaps he knew he was destined for greatness, but nothing is for sure yet. Hello again. Today marks the 17th of July. Today I met with Gatsby only a week after his last session because he was feeling particularly anxious about an upcoming event. Today he said he had lunch with a new friend, but in the event he had encountered an old enemy. Every time I encourage him to come right out and say what he means or what happened, but every time he holds back, as if something would make everything real. I feel that Gatsby likes to live inside his head. Today our main topic was World War I. Gatsby had been enlisted, but the way he talked about the events were not the same as any other person who I've heard talk of such horrifying stories. Instead, the way he talked about them made me sense that something outside of the war had happened to Gatsby. In fact, I'm almost certain. It wasn't the war that disturbed Gatsby, but what he was missing, or what he couldn't have because of it. It was restricting his subconscious desire to fulfill his destiny. Now, about what that destiny was, I feel I am very close to finding that out. Date, July 20th, yada yada. You know what? I think I finally cracked the case. Gatsby is living in the past. 5 years ago, to be exact. Today, he revealed everything to me. It was quite beautiful, actually. The reason he was so distraught about the war was because he met a girl, and her name was Daisy. His love for this Daisy seemed endless, so much so that he made love to her before he had to leave to fight in the war, promising that he would wait for her. And he did. His mind was frozen in a time with only Daisy. His compassion never grew less for that beautiful fantasy of his. She seemed to complete the destiny he had always been searching for. But for her, time did not stand still. For now she is married to a man named Tom. But Gatsby was not discouraged by this. Instead, he was quite the opposite. To think that a man had created a whole mirage for himself, the house, the parties, everything, just to impress a girl. It's just unbelievable. Anyways, in our session today, he was again quite different, but in a way I've never seen him before. He seemed to be happy, but it was the oddest thing. He started talking about how he had had lunch with Daisy yesterday. But after the story was over, his mood shifted drastically. I'd have never thought I could see this secretive, veiled man reveal so much of himself to me. He sat here, seemingly stripped down. So I asked him, "What have you discovered?" And he didn't say much, something about how it was wonderful to be in love. But the truth he revealed in his eyes was enough for me. Gatsby was scared. Scared that Daisy was not the same. But it was in his nature to not give up. He also felt threatened. Threatened by a man who seemed to think he could offer more for Daisy than Gatsby ever could. And all in that moment I could tell that his mind was spinning with the thought of having to live in the moment and how he could gain control once again. I tried to reason with him. "Life isn't about repeating the past," I said. "Instead, you should try to pursue your destiny with what's on the table. It's going to be messy, but it would be real. We'll see what happens, though. I have a feeling that this Gatsby is a ticking bomb." Today's date is August 2nd. Gatsby missed the last meeting we had scheduled. I called him and he said that something had happened with Daisy and he hadn't seen her since, but he couldn't talk and he hung up. That was the last time I spoke to him. A few days later, I got a call from a man named Nick, who told me that Gatsby had been killed. I didn't believe it at first, but I was more baffled when Nick told me that he considered himself to be Gatsby's closest friend. Gatsby had never mentioned a word about Nick, but I now realize that he never told me about the people most important to him until the very end. Nick asked me to go to the funeral. However, early in my career, I promised I would never get too close to a patient because that can be dangerous in my line of work. So I did not attend his funeral. I later heard that Nick was the only one who attended Gatsby's funeral. I felt I had made the wrong decision. But like ships, we rock incessantly into the past, and we must learn to move on.